Well, good morning, everybody. Today on the to-do list is to get the initial setup of our silage chopping preparation underway. So the very first step in that process, you may have noticed from where I am standing currently, right here by the silo, this feed box thing that we've built. Got to actually go inside the silo. I'll try to take you guys. I may have to go get a light because it's a little dark in there. Now that's a little better. So like I said, we got to climb our way over in here, see if we can shine this in here. And there is the silo unloader. So once we get inside there, we'll get a good look at it. A lot of little things that you need to evaluate, to assess, to see if there's been any damages of it being in the silo for the entire year. I've got to get a few things set up here to be able to fit me in that hole, because I'm about 6'2" or 3 or so, and about 235 pounds, and that hole's not the biggest in the world, but I can get in there. So I've just got to do a few things here to help me out. Woo. We made it. Not exactly a super fun experience, so I apologize in advance for the darkness, but there's really not a lot. Let me get you guys a look up here. All the way up here to the very top is the only real external light source in the silo. So I'm sure it probably echoes and it's a little dark in here, so hopefully you can see me and hear me okay. But basically what we're looking at here in front of us is a silo unloader, and down here on this end it's got some I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not. Well, not really good, but I'll try to explain. Inside of that cover there's two big augers in there, and those augers actually have little knives on them that dig in through this silage. The smell is pretty strong in here this morning, so bear with me a little bit. And that augers the silage into the center area here, which is a blower housing. Fan in there blowing, goes up that chute and shoots out that window that I just came in down to the feedway that we looked at in an earlier video. So what we got to do in here now is kind of assess things like that big hole in the shield there. I think we actually do have a new one of those. We want to look over, obviously, belts and such. We probably need to get on the other side to do that correctly. Here's another shield that we need to take a look at. This one actually probably looks fairly new. I think we did replace that one last year. There are two belts on this machine. There's a big longer one and this little small short one, and honestly they both look like they're in excellent condition, so I don't really see a need to replace that. We could check these while I'm in here. These wheels here on the end that ride along the wall. Oh yeah, well that one might be a bit concerning. A little looseness. Oh yeah, that one's good and tight. There are a lot of parts that go along with this to make this happen. I'm not really sure if any of you guys are familiar with the concept of how this thing works or not, but you have to kind of disassemble things like those big drive wheels over there and those drive shafts. You have to take the chute off, all that fun stuff, get it all kind of packaged up neatly. And outside there where I was raising that handle up, we actually have a it's just like an old motor fixed up with a square nub on it. that you plug in, and it runs and cranks this thing, and it goes all the way up there, resting against the very top up there. And that way when you fill the silo, which is that chute, I know it's hard to see, it falls down in here, and then you put the unloader back together up there, which is generally absolutely no fun, and then you start the feeding process again. So I know that's a lot of talking, and I've probably confused everyone completely and thoroughly. It's a lot to remember, but I'm going to climb back out of here. Consider the initial evaluation pretty good. So for those of you that might not be familiar, most of you guys probably have at least seen one of these pieces of equipment running around. There are lots and lots and lots of moving parts and a lot of maintenance areas that have to be done. This has been sitting in the barn since we cleaned it up last year, but as you can see, it's just amazing how dirty stuff gets just sitting in the barn. But we're not overly concerned about that at this point, but there is a lot of maintenance that has to be done here. A lot of grease points, a lot of fluid check points, a lot of chains down in all that area. So as we go along here with servicing this thing, I'll try to get a decent look. I will say this about choppers, corn choppers like this. This thing is extremely dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. These knives here, which is not connected to the tractor at this point, so pretty safe right now, but these knives here, once we get going into this, you actually sharpen those. I'll try to get some footage of that process. It is a pretty amazing process of the way you do that. The older machine that we used to have, this one is a 790. We had a 770, I believe. Before this is an upgrade. This actually is a 2-row. Here we have a 2-row head for this. The other one that we did have was just a single row head. So we've had this for, well, I think maybe last year was the first year that we ran this unit. So we've kind of learned a few things here and there. But as we go along, I'll try to show a few things along, and when we get it going here in a minute, actually get the PTO there hooked to the tractor with it running. Obviously everything from a safe distance. I'll get some footage of that, and you will understand why I refer to this as fairly dangerous as far as how fast these knives are turning. I'll kind of run through the process of what the machine actually does also. Just a real quick overview of how this machine works. Obviously you probably can figure out that there's a row of corn and there's a row of corn, and we're talking green standing corn, 10-12 foot tall sometimes. Well, maybe not quite that tall, 8 to 10 foot anyway. So this machine here, the corn comes into here. It's got some really sharp little knives here that go around in circles and chop the entire stalk off. And with this machine, you're cutting it off a couple inches off the ground, taking the entire plant 2 rows at a time into this head here, and it goes back through here, which these are called your feed rollers. Let me get a better look up here. Your feed rollers here, the corn kind of goes right in between of those two. They're turning in opposite directions to pull the crop in, and those feed rollers are sitting right in front of this large bank of knives that are turning at a very, very high rate of speed. And they chop the corn, the leaf, the ear up into little pieces, ½ inch long. And then it goes back here into this auger, over to the blower, and goes up and out the spout and actually blows back into a special made silage wagon with a floor conveyor and an auger in the front. We'll get to those later, but that's how you unload the silage after you harvest it. So that's just a real quick look at how this works. Everything goes in here, everything goes out that spout up there into the wagon. 10 or 15 spark-filled minutes later, we now have a nice shiny little sharp beveled edge on this knife bank here. Actually, when you're sharpening this, I did forget to point this out, these blades are spinning in the reverse direction of which they operate in the field, and that is just due to the bevel on the blade. And it's really hard for me to show you while I'm doing it because it's not safe, for one, for me to try to show you. But basically that grinding stone right there is connected to the other end of this handle here. As this is running, that's just dragging that grinding stone across that surface of that blade as the blades are spinning, or I guess I should say as the blades are spinning this direction for sharpening. So hope that made sense, but you do have to reverse the direction of that while you're sharpening versus where you operate in the field. So just going to do some greasing and some checking some gearboxes at this point. Hopefully done with the safety glasses for the day. But as you could probably see by the video, safety glasses would be a good idea on that job. Okay, so here we are at the hoop barn where we store our silage wagons. They're back through there. But this guy here in the front we got to move first is the silage blower. So I'll try to briefly explain. Those wagons, which we'll get to later, unload into there. Of course, all that stuff's out of the way. Augers it into a big fan housing inside of this part and shoots out that hole, which connects to the pipe on the side of the silo. Really not rocket science there. Just a big giant fan is what this thing is. So we got to get it out of the way, take it to the shop, grease it up, check it over, make sure these little tires have a little air in them, which they look pretty flat. Okay, so here it is. There's a silage wagon. Really not super fancy, but it gets the job done. Basically, it's a big box on a running gear with a special front on it. You can see there the row of teeth, those beaters. There's one down below that also there. That when this PTO is of course hooked to a different tractor, it turns this floor right here with those slats, pulls the silage forward, runs into this auger, and falls off into the blower, which we just looked at. So basically for yearly maintenance prep work, we just check tires, check gearboxes, grease stuff. Well, upon a further secondary evaluation of the silo unloader by Dad, he's fooled with it a lot more. Maybe knows a few more little hidden areas to look at than I do. We did find, move some stuff here, I'll show you this bearing, and well, it's going to be hard for you guys to see, but you're not supposed to be able to see those balls in there. So that was actually on the blower that blows the silage out, so that was a quite important part. It's a good thing he caught that, because when that thing's at the bottom of the silo, you just crawl in that little door, as hard as that is, and you can fix it. Versus that silo is 50 foot tall, and after you fill it and you run that unloader up, and then you discover that it's this 50 feet in the air, then you're hauling tools, it's just much worse than just fixing it on the ground. So very good catch on that part. Okay, so what you were just looking at is, I think I mentioned that in an earlier video, was I don't even know what that thing is. It's some kind of an old motor with a gear reduction, like gearbox type thing, that turns and cranks the silo unloader up. We've done it by hand when I was younger. It takes a long time, so that process is a lot quicker. I did, unfortunately, attempt to do some more videoing inside the silo of the actual tearing down of the unloader. It's just too dark and the sound is really not good, so I had to abandon that attempt. So sorry about not being able to show you guys that. Not really super exciting anyway. A lot of bolts and moving stuff and tying stuff up to different places, but we're at this point now. It is going up into the silo by way of that thing, and what you see here in the floor covered up with the tarp is a pile of silage. And just before we dismantled the unloader, blew a pile out here in the floor, and all that's going to let us do is to have something to feed the cattle on for a few days until we get everything full and the unloader back together so we can feed the traditional way again. So that's what that is. We're actually going to try to chop some silage tomorrow. Yeah, probably the corn's not quite ready exactly for say, but the reason we're doing it is we're going to have a field day for a seed company here on Saturday, which is the day after tomorrow. And we planted some inrows on the field that we're chopping on purpose in the way of the test plot, so we have to get those out of the way so the guys that are coming, all the folks that might be here, can get over to the test plot and take a look at the test plot. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. Not to say it's not the right time of year to chop silage, but the rest of the field might wait a few more days, maybe the first part of next week. So we'll get some better videos as we go. Just the silo, it didn't work. It's too dark in there. It's it echoes too bad. So we're left with what I can explain to you guys from out here. But this is pretty much it. Sitting here and kind of babysit this thing. Takes about 4 hours to run that up to 50-foot tall silo, and then you got a pile of silage here in the floor so you can feed traditionally. I am fixing to go roll some more hay. I was actually out here just to check on this situation because we don't necessarily ever want to leave that thing unattended for long periods of time, because it doesn't have a switch on it or anything that when that thing gets to the top it just quits. It would, in theory, just raise it through the roof, literally, and that would be a horrendous situation. So actually what I'm going to do, since everything is going pretty well here, I'm just simply going to unplug the thing, and just as an added safety measure, what we traditionally do here, well, it's a lot quieter now that that thing's not running, just take a screwdriver and just wedge it in here in the teeth of this thing as a emergency backup situation. So that's about all that's going on up here. It's a matter of getting that thing run all the way up to a level where you need it to be, and put all those doors obviously back in. By doors or windows, whatever you want to call them. Obviously I mean something to fill those holes in. They're actually over there, the other side of the barn. Had to do a little repair on them, so we'll get those in. So while I'm out here real quick, I will show you this silage blower that I was talking about the other day also, kind of how it sets up. So basically you have your silage that feeds into there, and it's connected to that big pipe and goes all the way to the top and blows in. So basically, like I said, this is just a big giant fan inside of that, and it just round and round and up it goes and blows in the silo. So there's a lot of that. It's really repetitive, but this usually my job is to camp out here by the tractor and be the one that puts the silage in. So I don't know how exciting some of the videos are going to be on that, but we'll see what we can do with that. I'll keep you posted as we go along.